Now we get to make our grand entrance.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, everybody.
So what we're going to do is talk a little bit and then eventually take some questions from the audience, right? So I just want to start by saying Lisa, for me, has not only is this a great book, but she has been an inspiration and an amazing, generous, and incredible source for years for me, for my own work. And her understanding of the sexual culture of young people and popular culture has been just instrumental in my thinking. And she's also the editor of you're still doing that, right? Yeah. Sociological Images, which if you have not seen, look it up, sociologicalimages.org.
Wait, just Google it.
Google it. Just Google it. Just Google it. It's kind of public sociology, public sociological imagination, and I learned so much about culture and the way it's a lens through which to look at our world that is just incredibly illuminating. So I highly recommend it. So, in other words, Lisa's the best. You open American Hookup by talking about college students and saying that students today report feeling depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, emotionally unhealthy, and that the sexual environment that they're in contributes to that. So tell me, what do they report, and tell me what they say to you about that.
Well, so the most acute problem, which everyone is quite familiar with, is the problem of sexual assault. And 1 in 10 students report being sexually coerced or assaulted in the last year. But there's much, much more going on than that. So about 1 in 3 students will say that their sexual relationships on campus have been either traumatic or difficult to handle. So above and beyond any kind of coercive experiences. And when we ask them in general, how are you feeling, they'll report all kinds of negative emotions like regret and disappointment and distress. And so this is a problem that we're seeing on almost all college campuses, and it's a new problem. It's not just the transition to adolescence that is always sort of difficult, but even in the last 10 or 20 years, this has been getting worse and worse on campus.
And what got you interested in writing this book?
I have been teaching sociology of sexuality classes on college campuses for about 10 years, and I was also watching the media conversation about hookup culture, and I just felt like it wasn't doing the students justice. It felt like they were being caricatured in these media accounts. And I was listening to my own students talk to me, and they were so much more diverse and so much more insightful. Their analysis of what was going on was so much more nuanced, and of course they're lovable and funny and just earnest and open. And so I decided to start collecting data. And so what I did is I asked them to write basically diaries and submit once a week for an entire semester, like what's going on with sex and dating on campus. And after I did that 3 times, but after I did it the first time, I knew that that if I could give them a platform to tell their stories to everyone else, that I wanted to do that.
And I think we should probably start by defining our terms. So how is hooking up different than your mom's casual sex?
Oh gosh, probably not that different. The argument of the book is that what's really going wrong on college campuses isn't the hookup per se, it's hookup culture. And so the difference between a campus in which there's hooking up and one in which there's a hookup culture is that when hooking up is an option, that's just a campus. That's every campus in the whole history of America, starting from when women weren't even there. There's always been all kinds of sexual activity on campuses. But a hookup culture is where it's not just an option, but it's an expectation, and sometimes even feels like an imperative or an obligation. And that is new in the last maybe 20 years.
Do we know how that started?
I have some ideas. Oh, golly.
People ask me that all the time, so I'm just curious what you think about that.
Yeah, okay. So the story has a lot to do with how colleges themselves became a place where people expected to have a good time. So that's a really interesting story, because why isn't college sort of dreadful and boring? I mean, it is school, right? It seems like it could be. But but so there's a wonderful story there about how students came to expect to have a raucous and also a sexy good time in college. But if I had to answer it in the most succinct way possible, I would go back to the feminists of the 1970s. And they wanted two things for America, for American women. They wanted